I'll be honored to do so. Lord our God, we thank you for this blessed gathering of faithful stewards, ministry leaders, and servants of your Holy Church. Pour out your Holy Spirit upon us, Lord, not only this evening, but throughout our lives, and upon all who labor with love in their hearts for the growth and unity of our parishes. Strengthen the hands of all who serve, and bless our work, that it may bear good fruit for the glory of your holy name. Grant us wisdom, clarity, and a spirit of collaboration as we learn from one another and grow together in ministry and in faith. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, now and always and unto the ages of ages. Amen.
Amen.
Good evening to everyone. Coming out of a very, very dynamic conference in Irvine this past weekend, a gathering of people with a great deal of inspiration. I greet you in this evening's webinar that is hosted by the Orthodox Parish Leadership Ministry of our metropolis. This evening's session, Becoming a Dynamic Parish Ministry, approaches for building, engaging, and serving. If anybody pay attention, yesterday's epistle reading, St. Paul, the last sentence, the last line, he warned his readers that whatever they do, to make sure that they understand that he who is the perfecter of the faith is Christ and nobody else. Let us have that in mind as we today grapple with this very dynamic title and session. We're going to have the opportunity for us to reflect on how can we better serve our faithful, strengthen our parish life, and glorify God through our ministries. We're blessed to have Mr. Peter Panagis with us this evening, whose leadership and experience in parish development will guide this important conversation, along with our dear friend and collaborator, Archon Steve Tibbs. Panagis' work with the 5-P ministry effectiveness. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Thank you. That model provides a practical and a thoughtful framework for assessing and enhancing the impact of our ministries. We cannot wait for that. Whether you are nurturing an existing program or discerning the call to begin something new, may this webinar offer insight, encouragement, and a renewed commitment to the sacred work entrusted to each and every one of us. Let us listen with open minds, speak with honest hearts, and be inspired by the shared wisdom of one another. Take what you will learn this evening back to your communities and put this valuable information to a good use. This is much work to be done, and we have often heard the saying, many hands make for light work. By expanding the offerings of our parish ministries and engaging more people to lead these important efforts, we can reach even more people where they are spiritually and emotionally, and help them stay involved and centered in the life of the parish. I pray that the time together this evening will help us move closer to becoming the vibrant and dynamic church that Christ has called us to be. Thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Your Eminence, and thank you for blessing this ministry and this evening. With that, then, I will turn it over to Peter and let you take it from here.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, so I apologize. A little bit of housekeeping. We'll be monitoring chat and hand raising. We'll take a look at the questions. If some are very specific to the topic at hand, kind of short focus, then we might address those right away. But other than that, we will do about 45 minutes for all the content. We've got some beautiful speakers this evening as well. And then we'll have Q&A at the end, but we'll kind of work that through. So Peter, apologies for interrupting. I'll turn it over to you now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you, Your Eminence, for that wonderful introduction. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a session where we're going to be talking about ministry effectiveness and how we can improve our parish life through our ministries. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing the presentation. And I'll go full screen for you. Steve, have you got that okay?
You're good.
Okay. So I'd like to give a shout out to my colleagues on the Orthodox Parish Leadership Ministry, as well as I've got a few folks on from the St. George, Prescott, Arizona community. Thank you for joining. And of course, thank you for everybody else for joining. I think we're going to have a really nice session tonight. The best news of all is you don't have to listen to me for the entire time. We have some guest speakers that are going to bring a very practical knowledge that they will share with us, mostly in the form of some stories to tell, but then also lessons learned and best practices that we're hoping will help you on your journey as you work with your ministries going forward. I'd like to pause and just look at the opening slide. Obviously, this is an icon that many of us have seen with Christ washing the feet of his apostles. You know, in Mark 10:45, talked about the fact that Christ did not come to be served, but to serve. And as we've all come to worship in this beautiful church, we have our own calling that we feel to serve, as do many parishioners. And giving those parishioners an effective ministry to connect to, if they so choose, is really a wonderful gift. And that, to me, is at the core of what we're going to talk about tonight, is really giving our parishioners an opportunity to connect with the church and to serve in ways that really help them and help their journey on their spiritual path. So in terms of the outline, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about why should we even focus on ministry effectiveness. I'll give you a very brief introduction to 5P. I really don't want this to be a theoretical conversation tonight. I want it to be a very practical one. And so I'm going to pretty quickly then get into 3 guest speakers that we have tonight. I'll introduce them as we get into the content, but you can see the names here and you get a little bit of an idea of what they're going to be speaking about. Then we're going to flash forward and talk a little bit about how to get started on the ministry effectiveness journey. I want to be perfectly honest with you. You know, Steve Tibbs and I have been at the ministry effectiveness game here with the 5P process for about the last 12 to 18 months. And while we've had a lot of interest in ministry effectiveness, we have not had that many parishes step up and say that they were ready to really take it on. And so I'm hoping tonight with some of these areas that we're going to talk about where you could get started, that you can see there's some very simple and easy things to do to get the journey underway. And then hopefully it builds on itself and builds momentum and you can go from there. And then as Steve said, we'll have questions at the end. With that said, please raise your hand during any section. Steve will be monitoring the questions as we go along. So with that, let's talk about why we should focus on ministry effectiveness. As I said in my introduction, you know, the ministries are an incredibly valuable connection point between the parishioners and the church. The folks that work on the ministries, certainly in our parish and in every parish I've ever visited, you can just feel how connected and how included they feel in the basic operations of the church. And in our minds, it's really a key contributor to parish health. Having that parishioner engagement is one of the very keys to having a healthy and vibrant parish. Obviously, much of the good work that's done in a church is done through its ministries. And so the more effectively that those ministries are operating, the better off everyone is, quite honestly. Whether it's a stewardship ministry or it's a ministry around, needs for like candles and oils and Prospera, they're all important. And the better that they operate, the better that the church operates. One of the things we found is that ministry budgets can be upwards of 10 to 15% of the overall operating budget of the parish, which is no small percentage. And so if you're going to be making an investment in ministries, you want to make sure that you're getting a return on that investment. And again, the best way is to make sure that they're operating well. And then finally, what we found, and this is no surprise, I'm sure, to anyone, but ministry leaders who lay out what it is that they want to do with the ministry members that they have working with them, and then they actually carry through and do what they said they were going to do, they create this incredible culture of achievement. And that's infectious. And that will attract more and more volunteers, not only to their ministries, but more and more people to just volunteer in general, because they'll see the parish as a parish that gets things done, and they want to be a part of that. And so those are the key reasons. There's many others, but from my perspective, ministry effectiveness is really one of the most important things that we could focus on in our parishes. So what you see in front of you here is the result of 24 surveys. These surveys were actually taken as part of a program that we call our 2x2 program. It's something that Orthodox parish leadership puts on. We have 12 parishes typically enrolled in the program each year. This is our second year, so now 24 parishes have taken this survey. And the survey is to look at these subject areas and then to rate how important these are to the individual parishes over the course of the next 18 months. And you can see, with leadership development kind of being at the top is the most important, all the way down to planned giving. Ministry effectiveness finds itself right in the center. But when you look a little deeper, you'll notice that nearly 3/4 of the respondents thought that it was important or very important to make some efforts to work on ministry effectiveness in the next 18 months. So at least from this particular survey, which 24 parishes is a pretty good sampling in our metropolis, we feel like there is a desire to get after this. And so we're hopeful that tonight's webinar will give some folks some incentives and some clues on how to start and where to start. So the 5P process, I promise to not go too deep into the theory here. But 5 Ps, as you can see, these are the 5 Ps that you have in front of you. I'm going to start with purpose up at the top. And this is, as it says on the screen, you start with your ministry's why. If you've ever done any kind of strategic planning in your parish, certainly if you've worked with Mr. Tibbs on your strategic planning, he's going to start with why. And it's really, really important to understand what the ministry is all about and what it is that you're trying to deliver. And then one of the great questions that Steve introduced me to a couple of years ago is, how does the ministry bring people closer to God? Because at the end of the day, the mission of most of our parishes is to do just that. And we want our ministries to support that mission. And, that's a question that many ministry leaders don't ask themselves. But you get some incredible responses once they do. And it really helps them to focus in on the purpose of the ministry and what it is that they should be delivering. So that's purpose. The second P we'll talk about is people, right in the center. I have people in the center because honestly, they really are at the core of an effective ministry. For most ministry leaders, the questions that they have to ask themselves are, do I have the right people and do I have enough of them? And do I have the support of my priest and the parish council to really make sure that my ministry is successful? And we're going to spend a fair bit of time talking about people tonight. That's going to come up in some of the practical applications that you're going to hear from our guest speakers. I'm going to switch over to the left to talk about the plan. And plan is really just what is it that you want to get done within your ministry? What are your deliverables? What are the goals that you have that are going to allow you to deliver those things that you want to? And then as you are putting that plan together, if there's expenditure needed for any of those activities, you need to capture your funding plan. Because typically in most parishes, you'll need to take that funding plan to the parish council for approval during the budgeting cycle. If we go to the bottom, we talk about presence. Presence is really how well is the ministry known within the parish? Do people know it exists? Do they know what its purpose is? Do they know who to contact if they want to find out more about that ministry? So it really speaks to the communications in and around the particular ministry. And then finally on the right, we talk about performance. And from my perspective, this is important, but honestly, it's what people kind of get to toward the end of a ministry effectiveness journey. How well now are we delivering on those goals? We said we were going to do these 4 things this year. Have we actually completed those? And have we gotten the outcomes that we expected? If we had this kind of rigor and structure within all of our ministries, I can tell you that they would operate really, really well. I will tell you also that any portion of this that a ministry has spent time thinking about and capturing or documenting is a positive, even if it's just the purpose, or even if it's just making sure they have the right people. So it's not an all or nothing. It can be something that you grow into. So don't feel like you have to be perfect in all of these right away in your particular ministry. In fact, we wouldn't expect you to be. So Steve, when we put this program together, Steve and I put together what's called a ministry effectiveness guide. And what you're seeing in front of you is the same 5 Ps now in a linear format. And this is meant to be a self-evaluation where you would actually give this form to a ministry leader and say, why don't you go ahead and just grade yourself, so to speak, in all of these 5 areas. And we give a little bit of detail into some of the things that we would expect to see under each of these if they were doing well. And again, I have rarely worked with a ministry, including the one that I lead at St. George. I don't have all of these green. I can tell you that right now. I strive to that, but I have work to do, and the work seems relatively constant. So if you were to give this to all of your ministry leaders and have them fill it out, what you might be left with is a scorecard that might look like this, where you have your ministries down the left-hand column, and then you've got these self-assigned scores from the ministry leaders. So this is where we have a little bit of audience participation in the presentation. If you were to see this scorecard, if you were, let's say, on the parish council, where would you start? What would you do with this? Can anybody just want to take a stab at that?
You need to start with your young adults because they're the future of your church.
Okay. Very good. And I will tell you that particular ministry in this scorecard said that they really didn't have a clear focus on their purpose. And so that would be a beautiful one to start with, because any ministry that is not clear on its purpose is going to struggle to figure out who the right people are, and they're going to have trouble writing any kind of goals because they honestly don't know what their purpose is. So I would say young adults and start with purpose. That's perfect. And you could say the same for outreach, perhaps secondary, because you're saying, young adults are the future of the church. But But the point is, for anyone, you really have to make sure that you understand and have clarity around the purpose of your ministry. So I would always start in that left column, to be honest, because it will allow you then to work your way through making sure that you are attracting the right people to work with you on your ministry and that you're setting the right goals and deliverables for that ministry. Okay, if you have questions about ministry effectiveness, you can certainly put them in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to continue to move forward. We're going to get right into our guest speakers. I want to pause for a minute because Proverbs gave us a really wonderful passage here. The way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice. Well, you're about to get advice from 3 people that have been through different aspects of ministry work. Our first speaker tonight is Nick Spiliopoulos. Nick is someone who attends our church here in Prescott. I guess it's been almost a year ago now, Nick founded with and is now the co-leader of what we call our safety ministry. It might otherwise be called the safety and security ministry, but Nick will get into that here in a moment. And so Nick's going to talk a little bit about what it was like to start a ministry from scratch. We had absolutely nothing in this area within our church. And very quickly, Nick spun up the safety ministry with the help of his team. And he's going to talk about that experience now. So Nick, if you want to go ahead and come off of mute, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so we can see your wonderful face. Okay, sir. Come off. You got.
There you go.
There you
But
go.
you can hear me now.
We got you.
Now. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Your Eminence. Yeah, Nick Spiliopoulos. I've been a member at St. George for a little over 2 years now, I believe. And I was involved at a previous church with a safety and security ministry. And so when I came to St. George, I had people approach me because of my background. And not that they were, I don't want to use the word concerned, but they were interested in this whole topic because, as you know, the Department of Homeland Security has oversight. They have a web page. They have great publications out there that all of us can log into. And they describe places of worship as a soft target. So soft target, as defined by the Department of Homeland Security, means it's easily accessible to a large number of people and have limited security or protective measures in place, which makes them very vulnerable. So I don't think there's anybody out there tonight or throughout the U.S. As you read the news, you see what's happening. We have numerous protests. In the future.
Sorry.
Oh,
It's me. That's sorry.
oh, that's okay. Bentley. Anyways, yeah, so there's an issue about this security. How do we secure our parishioners in a church setting with a minimal footprint? We don't want to disrupt, the liturgy. We're a small parish and growing, but because we're a small parish, we decided to focus on Sunday mornings because Sunday morning is our Super Bowl, right? That's when most people come to church. We have people at Vespers during the week, but that's not the 150 people we're going to have at Divine Liturgy. So when I set up the ministry, we were going to concentrate on Sunday mornings and how we were going to proceed to make that a more secure environment. Other things you do before you start the ministry, or what I did, is first I talked to the parish priest, obviously Father Jeffrey, just to make sure he knew what was going on, what I was thinking, and anything I thought, I wanted to run it through him and the parish council because I didn't want to offend anybody, overstep, and I wanted to be in line with what they were expecting from the ministry. So number one, that's a good thing to do, is consult your leadership, come there with a plan and discuss your vision and make your vision fit what their vision is going to be as well, and work with them so that everybody's happy. I'll tell you, safety and security, everybody's gangbusters on the safety portion, right? Your medical emergencies in church, somebody faints over here in the pew, um, other things that happen. There's not a lot of people that want to focus on the security aspect, or it's kind of the elephant in the room sometimes, right? Because there's active shooters. You heard about synagogues being attacked in different churches throughout America that have been attacked, or these active shooter scenarios. And so that's kind of the elephant in the room. So before you discuss that, you need to bring in your insurance carrier, which there's not too many ministries that I know of that have this step. So if you're thinking of starting a security and safety team, consult your insurance carrier, because that's going to affect maybe some of your coverages and how they view what they can do for you. The fact that we are all volunteer team comports with their policy. If we were designated and we were paid, or something changed in the volunteer aspect of our team, that would cause some kind of a glitch with the policy coverage. And then we would have to move forward from there. And so you don't want to do something that's going to jeopardize your insurance coverage and insurance carrier. So that's an important step that we at St. George had to go through, just to make sure we didn't go outside the bounds of the current policy. Moving forward, so I identified things, and in the previous church that I was at, you want to identify your needs, and then you want to choose the right people that come with the skill set that you're looking for. And so security aspect, I concentrated mostly on veterans and first responders, at police, fire, EMTs, emergency room personnel, nurses, physicians. So anybody that has a skill set that can be used in the safety and security arena, not only the skills necessary like first aid or CPR or AED training, but also the mindset. Because if you're going to deal with a concealed weapon or something like that, you have to have the right mindset. So not everybody is going to be conducive to your team. You have to be very selective, and choose the right people, and then talk with them, and just achieve a comfort level that they know and you're comfortable with their skill set. So I'll speak more about that as well. But so I concentrated on the veterans and the first responders. Second, you got to get people, obviously, that come to church on Sunday morning, right? If you're on the team but you're not there for the Super Bowl, for the Divine Liturgy, then you're not going to be much help to the safety and security aspect. Now, if you're out and you're at Vespers and something happens, that's great. Okay. But again, for us, the most bang for our buck, when we have the most people congregate at one time with the least amount of protection, is probably going to be during Divine Liturgy on a Sunday morning. I talked about the right mindset. And then I also want to add that annually, you have to do a background check of all your people. And so that's I don't want to say it's difficult, but it's a tedious process. I know I logged on personally to the Metropolis website or whatever. I took the quizzes, I saw the little vignettes that they did, and I hit, send. And then next thing you know, I'm wondering, did that go through? Just the feedback mechanism for that, I had to find out who our point of contact is at the church, because I think there's one point of contact, and maybe Father Jeffrey is. So the priest and one other point of contact has visibility over all the background checks. So for me on the safety team, it's a harder than I thought it would be type of step to do, but you got to get it done. And so we do it. We're going to try to do it every fall, right? It'll coincide with, the new school year at the church. And so everybody who's an altar server or a teacher or anybody who deals with children, you're going to have to log on and do your background check, and then I'm going to try to formalize the process and document it so that we can pass one of our audit questions, because one of the people said that that's one of the hardest things is we never get a list of who's been background checked for this year. So I think we can do that. Anyway, so moving forward, yeah, the 5P process is very instrumental to me. The first thing I want to say is, like everything else in life, you're waiting for the perfect thing to get all of your 5Ps in order. That's probably not going to happen as easily as you think. So don't procrastinate. Put it on paper, what your steps are, what your goals would be, and keep it very simple to begin with. You're going to review this annually, like every summer. Like right now, I'm in the process of going through it again, my 5P plan. And so you're going to update and create new goals, or continue with goals that you haven't met yet. But if you wait to have everything perfect, then you might not start for 6 months or another year or something like that. So you don't have to be perfect. You just have to get the ball rolling, and then strive to take your baby steps and continue to move forward with your mission, or your plan and your purpose and your performance and such. So, um, situational awareness for our team and for all parishioners is an important step at church. I mean, we all get, concentrate on the liturgy, but for the safety team members, you're always looking backward, forward. We're in different places throughout the sanctuary, or looking for what's happening. Since we started the team, we've had 2 medical emergencies that we had to evacuate people outside and then call 911 and have the fire, first responders come, the paramedics, and, you know, follow up at the hospital and such. So 2 medical emergencies. We had one other kind of off the wall issue, but it talks about when people know who you are, that you're a member of the team. So when I was out of the country this past February, and we had an issue at St. George where we have some space that is rented out to tenants that gives us some income in a building next door. And so between the church and this building, there's a courtyard, and we had uh, got notice that there were some homeless people that were occupying the courtyard at night, and that they were, I'm going to use the term breaking in, but they were inside this building because somehow they had a code, and they were using the restroom and shower. And so when the tenants got there in the morning, it was unnerving for them to say, hey, somebody's been in here, what's going on? We've seen the homeless packing up or whatever. And so I got this email. I was included on an email. One of our parishioners filled out an incident form, which we standardized within the church. And then she attached it to her email. And since I got it, even though I was in Slovakia trying to go to a wedding, I sent a note to one of my co-leads and said, Steve, go ahead and get in touch with the police, have them start doing drive-bys at night, check the courtyard. Meanwhile, we'll do the lock change on the doors, and we'll add some cameras and whatever. But the whole point of my conversation here is, not everyone's going to have that issue, and you don't really think of safety and security in that manner. But if people know who you are, they can add you on their CC line or whatever. And if there's an issue, you can become involved in something like a simple phone call to the police. Uh, will rectify that situation. And in fact, it did. And so that's just a little lesson learned right there. Another issue, we're looking at building a new church. So some of the folks on the building action committee were asking different ministries, what are your requirements, and going through things that perhaps they would like to see in the new building. Obviously, we're in the beginning stages, and if we get to build what we want to build, we'd like to know what you're thinking. And so from a security and safety point of view, I had a nice conversation for about 25 minutes of things that I recommended that the parish did, or this building action committee would include things from the cloakroom, location of the classrooms, the safety of the children, how to protect the building from traffic. You don't want people driving into your building depending on access from the road and things like that. Things that I think of differently perhaps than just somebody else who's just attending church. And so that's another offshoot of the safety and security team that you may not think up front, but that's like a sidebar issue. And then we're here to consult and make recommendations to the parish council. And then the parish council can decide, yes, we want to go with that, or no. Maybe we can't afford this camera system, Nick, that you're recommending. Can we go with a cheaper issue or cheaper set of cameras that will fit more within our budget, but do the same thing? And so those are the conversations we've had with the parish council and such, and it's great. They love it because I'm doing some of the legwork. The team, we're doing some of the legwork. We're coming up with a proposal, and they're saying, yeah, that makes sense. And so we're going to move forward and go with that route. So,
Okay. If I can interject, we do have a couple questions here, and then possibly move on.
sure.
That's okay. Nick, you okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So one comment by Michael was that it's just a comment, but basically regarding, he says, I believe every parish in Metropolis has a parish youth safety administrator appointed by the priest. They will have access to current status of volunteer requirements, and the Metropolis Youth and Young Adult Department can assist. They've been super helpful to our parish. That might be a resource we can go to.
I agree.
Another question is from Anastasia. Various ministries have emergency response plans required by the fire department. Are people trained for fire, flood, earthquake, weather events, and evacuation plans? My experience in that is yes and no. Without going too deep in these plans, are you familiar with any of these trainings?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to create your own plans for your own building. I don't believe there's a certification process, but if you think that, the fire is in over here to the right, you're not going to go to the right. You're going to go to the left, and you're going to evacuate people. Where are you going to congregate the people once they're outside the building to make sure you didn't leave somebody in the building? So yeah, I mean, on day one, none of that existed, right? But you're going to have these meetings with your team, and you're going to discuss all these little scenarios. And hey, the fire department is going to come up through here, and this is where they're going to hook up to the closest hydrant. And so you don't want your people standing right there because that's where the hydrant is. You want them further away. You don't want them driving from the parking lot out because now this big fire truck's going to be coming in. So you got to think about, how do you want to do this? How do you maintain control and that type of thing? The other thing I'll say about standard operating procedures, they're good and bad because they're good because everybody knows you're on board and this is what we're trying to accomplish. But if you don't do that for some reason, then it's bad because, in civil litigation or something, that might be used against you. So I just tell you, use common sense. If the fire is over here by this door, you're not going to go out that door. You're going to go out through this way. How do you secure the building? You lock certain doors. You make sure the windows are closed if there's a fire so the oxygen doesn't feed the fire. These type of things. So I don't know if I answered the question.
Maybe one last question, and then does anyone know of a template existing with the Archdiocese of the Metropolis for a crisis response plan that parishes can adopt, or an outline of topics to consider? And why don't we do that in about 30 seconds and move on?
Yeah, no, I'm not aware of that.
Is there anybody from the metropolis that is aware of anything?
I could just jump
Anastasia
in and let
notes that. I'm sorry.
I could just jump in and let you know that John Pogus, Pogas, at the parish, the name is escaping me right now, outside of Philadelphia, has created a comprehensive written safety and security plan that he shares with anybody that wants to.
Excellent. Thanks, Bill.
And can I just jump in one more thing that I'm sure your general counsel would want you to notify also, that in addition to the youth protection stuff, all parish council members must also go through background checks. So I know that, it was mentioned about the youth workers, but please remember that as part of the safety and security thing, all parish council members must be background checked.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Thanks, Bill. Okay, Peter,
Okay.
back to you, or unless Nick has some more.
Nope, but this is good. So thank you, Nick, very much for that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Very helpful. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Alexis Pappas. Alexis joins us from the Archdiocese, and I'm just trying to get, I don't want to put a slide up because I'd like to at least recognize her. So let me just share for a moment. And I will advance. She's the ECM cohort coordinator, so she's going to talk about youth and young adult ministries, but she's also going to talk about engagement and engaging parishioners, whether they're young or multi-generational, honestly, in the ministries. And so, Alexis, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to hear what you have to say. I'll go ahead and run your slides for you if that's okay.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. I was telling my boys tonight that I worked as a parish, as a pastoral assistant for 12 years, and then became an ECM coach for 2 years. And like anything in the church, I was promoted to be when you enjoy something, they put you in charge of it. So now I'm the cohort director, and I have young adult children in here with me tonight. So lots of experience with youth and young adults in parish ministry. Next slide. So the first point I'd like to make for effective ministry is anytime you're doing ministry, you should be intentional and not accidental. It's the time of year when a lot of ministry leaders are basically getting calendars out. And thank goodness you guys have the 5 Ps and are using that, because most of the time we're just choosing dates and thinking about what would people like, what went well last year, let's do that again. At Effective Christian Ministry, we actually offer a 5-hour course that will share with you what we have done wrong in ministry, the pitfalls for ministry, and what we can do to improve it. And it actually shows us that when we continue to make the same mistakes in ministry, it's really detrimental to the young people and the parish that we're serving. But we do have answers in the practices of our church. But it has to do with knowing the needs and challenges of the world that we're living in today. And this is what the course does. This world that we're in is a secular world. And what young people are looking for is an experience of God and not facts about God. This is why things like our camping programs are so successful. But I would stretch that and say that all people are looking for an experience of God and not just facts about God. And when the church feels like one big family is when ministry is working. Next slide. So when you're designing ministry, it's so important to know your audience. And at Effective Christian Ministry, one of the things that we recommend parishes do is meet with young people and have coffee and ask them, how has ministry impacted you or not? And to practice really good listening skills when you hear that feedback. The second thing is when you start to make your ministry goals, a pitfall that we have in ministry is, like I said, planning everything for everybody. Co-creating goals in the parish is really important. And then the third thing is to really understand sort of the latest research, what's the pulse of society today is really important. And so right now in my own parish, we're focusing on the fact that we know that 40% of young girls between 14 and 18 are reporting loneliness. So these aren't young people in our parish. This is a study from the Anxious Generation book. So we know that if we're looking at society as a whole, that we can guess that the young girls in our parish are reporting loneliness. So what are we going to do about that? Next slide. And so loneliness can be addressed through Christian fellowship. In Christian fellowship, we sometimes think it's just getting together and having fun, just a pool party. But true Christian fellowship has certain characteristics. And one is that it's consistent. We had a youth director as an assistant priest that had a policy, never cancel a youth event. And he never did. Even the one person that showed up was important enough to minister to. I always say, if that one person shows up, take them for a steak dinner and enjoy their company and get to know them. Does your ministry offer curiosity? So what we mean in curiosity is kind of this joyful anticipation that the people leading the ministry know the Lord, and that they're excited to share that with people, and they want to know where the people they're ministering to are and how they can support them in their relationship with the Lord. So there has to be an element of curiosity. Enjoyment, it has to be fun, and it needs to have some depth. Christ-centered conversation, even if the context isn't formal, you can still have depth to the gathering. Trust, that goes back to that listening and the impact coffee that I was talking about. Your people that you're ministering to need to learn how to trust you, and you need to model trust to that group. The best way to have effective ministry is to model effective ministry. And third, true Christian fellowship is co-suffering. With my loneliness efforts in the middle school Sunday school class that I was teaching this year, we began a prayer circle at the end of each class. And in that prayer circle, we first began with silence to invite Christ into that moment. And then we began to offer something that we needed prayers for, and we did a prayer circle where you had to pray for the person next to you. You had the option to pass, and we actually had some things that we knew that people wanted prayers for. Like we said, we know you want us to pray for your family, or we know that you're anxious about school, but we tried to add depth and say, what else could we pray for? And that seemed to work really well with those middle schoolers. Next slide. Okay, so I've talked a lot about middle school and youth ministry, but one of the key aspects in youth ministry that we're noticing today at Effective Christian Ministry is that we've become almost institutionalized by ministry. And so we see people graduating from high school, but leaving the church because their attachment was to Goya, to Greek dance, to basketball, and their attachment wasn't to Christ. So we're also challenging in Effective Christian Ministry our parishes to de-silo ministry, to not only identify a high schooler with the Goya group, but to provide opportunities for intergenerational ministry. Some things that we have seen work are, one, older parishioners hosting young adults in their home for a dinner. Now, this is not like a big young adult gathering at someone's house. This may be 2, 3, 4 young adults with an older adult couple and maybe 1 or 2 other people in the home, sharing kind of what their faith journey was like, maybe even playing a game together. But these young adult dinners have been very successful in parishes we've seen. This also combats that loneliness that I spoke about, for that it's not only middle schoolers and girls that are lonely, it's our older population that is very lonely right now. And finding ways to integrate that older population with your younger population is very effective ministry. Another example of that is we had a parish during their Coliva workshop. So not only did they teach about Coliva, did they make Coliva, but instead of just chitter chatter during the Coliva, they actually had older parishioners sharing testimony about the people that they were praying for. And the young ones really enjoyed that. Another example is asking youth, what do you see outside the church as a need? So they may say homelessness. So pairing the older adults with young people in the cause that they believe in. So the cause is chosen by the young adult, by the youth, and then they're partnered with adults to go and serve and address that cause. Another example that worked very well in our parish, it was right after COVID, and I used to be like a really big event person. Like I thought if a lot of people didn't come to a ministry, then it was a flop. Well, I was really, I learned a lesson with these post-COVID calls. We asked junior Goyans to come to the church and have pizza and spread out. We were still in that kind of transition stage, and call our shut-ins. Well, my personal opinion was, what junior Goyan even knows how to use a phone? And why would they even go to the church and spread out and do this? This is just going to be terrible. Well, 3 young men came who were completely unrelated, and our assistant priest. They loved this project. They recognized people on the list. They connected people. They said, that's my yaya, that's my nuna, that's my mom's older sister. And they got to be with their priest kind of in a very small setting, and they got to know each other. So again, to me, it was there was a lot going on there, like not canceling, being consistent, but also Christ-centered and co-suffering, but then they had fun doing it. And building relationships across generations. One of my favorite ways for that is in our high school Sunday school class, we ask older adults to share their testimony. And I noticed this in the 5 Ps, and we do this a lot with our Goyans. When you do introduce something to a ministry, to take a quick survey. You know, what did you think of this? What were you impacted this? 2 easy questions. So when our high school class was hearing testimonies from our older parishioners, we just asked them to write down, how did this impact you? And I wanted to share with you tonight 2 responses. One said, I liked the series because I got to learn more about my parish. Throughout the series, I learned many ways to not fall away from God, and during struggles, how to lean on God. And another one said, I loved hearing how I'm not the only one struggling. I have people I can relate to. So in conclusion, the very first thing I recommend for effective ministry is to do some research. Know your audience. In this Effective Christian Ministry course, you will not only understand young people, but you'll really understand the secular world that we live in today, and how these experiences of God are so much more important than the facts about God. The third thing is create one intergenerational opportunity this year. This is what I'm challenging you to do. It's very easy. You can have a dinner, you can have a testimony. We did at our parish a parish serve day where our Goyans went and did some yard work for our seniors. And the big thing that I would like to say is, whatever you do that's new, always do a survey and follow up. And the closing thought is, like I said at the beginning, when the church feels more like a family, instead of everyone siloed into a different group, then we know that we have effective ministry. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. That was awesome. Thank you so much. Steve, anything in chat? Any questions before we move on?
Just had one comment come up, which was, what a great idea. Intergenerational dinners at homes. Many good ideas. Alexis, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And our last guest speaker of the night, and then we're going to spend a few minutes talking about how to get started on some ministry effectiveness activity, is Father Jeffrey Freit. Father is our priest at St. George Greek Orthodox Church, our spiritual leader, and he's also the leader of our adult education ministry. He's going to spend a few minutes talking about something that he started a little over a year ago at the church, which I'm sure many of the parishes here may already have in place, but it's basically a council of ministries. And he's going to talk a little bit about the council of ministries, how it was formed, and the benefits that we've seen from putting it together. Father Jeffrey?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm here.
There you are.
I don't know if anybody can see me or if you need to.
We can see you.
Oh, okay. I can't see me. So the Council of Ministries, the impetus for it, and as Peter said, I think I had read about it and heard about it from some other parishes. But the reason I wanted to see it started at our parish is so that all of the ministry leaders and their co-leaders, as well as the parish council, could meet together on a regular basis so that they really learn about what all of the other ministries are doing together, and they learn how to support one another. Because a lot of the times they encounter, especially if there's different ministries that are functioning at the same time. So, for example, on Sunday morning, every Sunday morning, there's multiple ministries that are engaged in some sort of activity. And so for them to be able to meet together and talk about problems that they're encountering, difficulties that they're having, and maybe one ministry is doing something that's stepping on the toes of another ministry, and it gives them the opportunity to talk about those things and learn how to, kind of provide some traffic control. And also related to the 5P plan that Peter was sharing earlier, it gives the ministries a chance to, so they have a plan. Ideally, each ministry would have a plan for the year. As they meet with the council ministries, it gives them a chance to share what they're going to be doing for the next few months. And then again, to talk about, so for instance, we have coming up this year, our evangelism ministry will be hosting an event for St. Nicholas Day that we do every other year, where we invite the community of Prescott to come to the church, and we talk about St. Nicholas and who he was, but also we have somebody that's a local guy that dresses up like Santa Claus. He comes to be there with the kids, and then we also have activities and other things for the kids to do while the adults and their parents are kind of hearing a lecture. And we also usually have the choir sing. I'm sorry, my neighbor's outside. We had a bear in our neighborhood, so he's talking with my wife about how there was a bear in our front yard the other day.
Sure,
so-
it's the old bear story. We got it. Yeah. Yeah.
So in that event requires participation from the evangelism ministry, from the choir and chanters, from the philotekos, and from the church school. All of these different ministries are coordinated together, and so it gives us a chance to kind of to talk about that and get it in people's minds that this event is coming up and we're going to have to work together. And I think it really provides an opportunity for people to inspire one another when they see what other ministries are doing. And again, related to the 5P plan, so they're sharing their plan, but then they're also getting some presence, in the minds of the other ministry leaders. And it can also provide an opportunity for scheduling. So if we had something happen just recently where we have an event where we bless pets in Prescott, we set up a booth in Prescott and bless dogs and stuff like that. And it's a public event just to be a blessing to the community. and there was a really important meeting of the Philopticos that was scheduled on the same day. And if we had been more on it with the Council of Ministries, I think if they had communicated a bit better at that meeting, we would have avoided having a kind of an overlap, because I had to be at both places at the same time, and I'm not, able to bilocate. And and that's the type of thing too that at our next meeting we can talk about, like, well, how do we make sure that that we try to avoid stuff like that in the future. It's also a good way for parish council. We try to have parish council liaisons that are connected with each of the ministries, that'll check in with them throughout the year regarding their plans and how things are going. And so it's just another opportunity for the parish council members to hear from their ministries in that context. A couple challenges that I've seen is that, so at the meeting you'll capture maybe some different action items, things that need to be addressed. And so just like anything, you got to follow up with those things. And because you're only meeting once a quarter, that can be a little, you can have a tendency to forget things. So having some sort of plan in place to make sure that you keep up with your action items is important. I've also found, and I haven't done this, so shame on me, but I really do think that the best practice would be to schedule the meetings for the Council of the Ministries at the beginning of the year, so that there's just one per quarter and everybody's prepared and it's all set. And then another challenge I think that you may run into with the ministry leaders and the parish council at first, if they've never done this before, is trying to convince them to attend another meeting. It may be difficult to convince them of the value of this meeting, but I can assure you that it is really valuable, and the times that we've met have been a real blessing to everyone involved. And I think it's only gotten better from the beginning. So thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Father Jeffrey. That was actually very, very helpful. Excellent recap. Hello, Presbyter. Okay, Steve, anything for Father Jeffrey? Otherwise I'm gonna move into how to get started.
I don't hear him.
Steve, you're muted.
Oh,
Well, it's a specific question for Bill and Bill Marianis and Father Jim, which is where is the stewardship calling or best practice repository? It used to be on the GOA stewardship page. I can't find it anymore. Is it still on stewardshipcalling.org?
For which one? For the stewardship stuff or for the best practices piece?
Well, it just says where. Well, Bill Rockwell asked the question. Maybe Bill can.
All right. So Bill,
that's the Council of Ministries, what he was just talking about. So
Yeah,
I did internet search. I searched stewardship calling, tried to find on a stewardship page on GOA, couldn't find anything.
I'll tell you
So-
where I have it, Bill.
Steve, it's in the
So-
comments. It's in the comments. Just look at the next comment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that's Father Dalber's, which was done a while back. If in addition to that, if you go to stewardship calling under resources, and I'll put a link in there, the first tab under there is my doctoral dissertation, and that is kind of where all the, where I try to put all the best practices in there. And there's a section on the Council of Ministries in there.
Good.
And I'll put the reference to that also for you. It's on page 392.
392. Okay, I already
Thanks,
got
Bill.
it downloaded, so I'll go there. I didn't search that. Thanks.
And we also have it in the chat. Father Corderis, I believe you put this up as well. And Bill just mentioned it, Father Stephen Dalber. So that information should be there for you. And one other thing from Alexis, if anybody has any interest, which I hope you do, for Effective Christian Ministry, in the chat is the address effectivechristianministry.org to learn more. So that's there as well. So thank you, Alexis. Okay. I think that's, well, Bill asked the question again, what's the relationship between the parish council and the council of ministries? Anyone like to take that?
A question for me, Steve, or for Bill?
Go ahead, Father.
It's a toss-up.
It's a toss-up.
Whoever can jump highest gets it.
So
Yeah.
I'll just, well, if you want to jump in first, the way we envisioned it was the Council of Ministries is its own organizational unit, which includes every member of the parish council. But the parish council members that are not officers are liaisons to the ministries. So if you had 30 ministries and you had 10 extra parish council members, each parish council member is a liaison to 3 ministries. That doesn't mean they run it. That just means they attend and participate at it. Then at the parish council meetings, instead of, bogging down on, who's going to cut the grass and irrelevant minutia, each of the respective parish council members can now share what the key issues that they discovered or heard or new programs that are being offered by their ministries at the parish council. So if you think about the council of ministries, it includes the co-heads of each of the ministries plus the parish council, but the parish council members serve as liaisons and then share best practices at the parish council meeting.
That's all I
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah. Okay. One last question. Would a regional meeting of leaders in the same roles, parish council presidents, safety leaders, dance council leaders, altar leaders, be valuable to share best practices? In other words, getting all these folks together, do we think that would be valuable? My guess is probably yes, if you can pull it off.
It's always valuable to get.
It's always good to talk and share. Yeah.
It's always valuable to get together, but it's exactly the issue of how do you get all these people together.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little bit unrealistic, but you can have sections of this group of people that they are working, and you see them all the time, like I see you now here, doing the work of Christ. Maybe we can do that in a real time and regionally. I think that is doable.
Yes. Father Caderas.
Your clergy lady assemblies, especially in San Francisco, you're good at having ministry leaders share at your assemblies. That's a great opportunity. I think you're already doing that in a big way.
And that's just what we just did at ours, is to have certain of the ministries get together and share some of their ideas and best practices. But if you routinize that, Steve, you could do that at every, have a session, an hour or so to devote it at every clergy lady.
Yeah, absolutely. Have great points. Okay, so looking at this time, I want to make sure I turn this back to Peter. So Peter, back to you.
Okay. Is the slide deck back up, Steve?
It is.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about how to get started. I'm going to review, 8 or 9, maybe 10 ideas for how to get started. Please understand that this is not me saying you have to do all 10 of these. These are just some ideas. Maybe you pick one that you could do in your parish, or a couple. So we're just going to fly through these pretty quickly. If there's any questions, we can certainly take those before we adjourn. What I do want to make sure that people keep in mind is that I would highly recommend you start small and you keep it simple. You heard that from Nick. You heard elements of that from Alexis. Making sure that you don't get all caught up in saying ministry effectiveness is too big a thing for me to tackle. Doesn't have to be. So one of the first things that I would recommend is that we have a ministry effectiveness survey that we actually make available in our 2x2 program when I do the session on ministry effectiveness for that program. However, we could make that survey available to any parish who wanted to participate in it. We can set it up for your parish. We would ask that your ministry leaders and the parish council fill out the survey, and then we would share the results and we could talk with you about our interpretation of what we see, and then maybe some very specific ideas of where you might start on your ministry effectiveness journey as a result of that. These surveys are very quick to take. They generally take 1 to 2 minutes. I think there's like 12 questions, and you just rate it from strongly agree to strongly disagree. One idea. Another idea is that I believe you should strongly consider a co-leader structure for your ministries. We have not gotten all the way there at St. George, but we've gotten a lot better. And the reason I say this is because, as Nick was talking about in his section, something came up where he was out of the country. He had a co-leader, somebody knew how to contact the co-leader, or at least Nick did, and that person could get something done. We have a very real, situation with a parish I worked with where they are seeing the same kind of growth in their Orthodox church that we're all seeing, with a lot of inquirers and a lot of catechumens. And their catechism ministry has a single leader, and that individual, unfortunately, has a job that makes them unavailable often. And so there's a very irregular schedule in terms of when the classes are going to be available to the catechumens. If there was a co-leader, we would certainly have a way to sub someone else in there in those situations where that leader can't be there. So I'd strongly consider doing that within your ministries. As Alexis said, there's an effective Christian ministry course at the archdiocese level. I would recommend that you enroll 1 or 2 or a small subset of ministry leaders in that course. It sounds like it's about 5 hours, and it sounds like it would really be valuable for every parish to have more insight into it. As Father Jeffrey talked about, we would recommend you organize a council of ministries if you haven't already. Again, start simple. Maybe the first meeting you just talk a little bit about who the leaders and co-leaders are and what the ministry is named and what they're all about, but you don't go any deeper than that perhaps in the first meeting. And then in successive meetings, you talk about accomplishments and plans for the next 90 days and so forth. The biggest thing is making sure that the Council of Ministries becomes an internal support network. And we've already seen that at St. George, where we've got ministry leaders working with other ministry leaders to help them with their challenges. And then once you have those meetings, we would strongly suggest you share the minutes of those meetings with the parish, whether that's in a verbal update or it's in a written update in the newsletter. That would help your presence, making sure people know these ministries exist and that they're there for them in terms of possible volunteer opportunities in the future. We would make sure that you assign parish council liaisons. Bill just spent a moment on that. Anybody who's not a parish council officer should be assigned as a liaison to at least one ministry, and in most parishes, likely more. I and one other parish council member at St. George, I believe, have 8 ministries that we are liaisons to. If you want to get started on the 5P and really start to go down the ministry effectiveness path, I'd recommend you find a couple of ministry leaders who are willing to fill out the effectiveness guide. So remember that sort of stoplight self-assessment I showed early in the presentation. Give that to a couple of your ministry leaders and have them fill it out. And then when you get that back from them, make them put together a goal to address one of the areas where perhaps they're not quite where they need to be in their ministry. If it's the fact that they don't have the right people or they don't have enough people, maybe there should be a goal for this year to make sure that they get additional members or members with the right skills and experience. And then once you get the first 2 to do it, get a few more. And that's the way this works. It starts to feed on itself. Another thing that we would think about is for the next budgeting cycle is that any ministry that's going to come forward and ask for budget out of the operating budget, that they at a minimum could provide the parish council with their purpose, how that purpose supports the church's mission, and their goals for the next 12 months and how that funding is going to support and help them complete those goals. We actually get more challenges to ministry budget items at our fall General Assembly than we do from the parish council. Other parishioners ask a lot of questions about budget in our General Assemblies, and this will allow your ministry leaders to be ready for those questions as they arise. Another resource that Bill has on his site is ministry handbooks. We would strongly recommend putting together a ministry handbook and keeping it fresh. Make it exciting, have some photos in there and things showing, activities that the ministry is undertaking. And we would make sure that that ministry handbook is referenced when you go with your annual stewardship packets. Because in those packets, it would be nice to have a card in there where parishioners can checkbox areas where they're interested in a particular ministry or so forth from a volunteer perspective. And then give those ministry leaders, when a parishioner checks a box for the stewardship ministry, make sure that that stewardship ministry leader or co-leader then reaches back out to that individual to talk with them about, you know, potential opportunities to serve on that ministry. And then finally, please don't hesitate to reach out to me to discuss anything around ministry effectiveness or how to begin in your parish. And here's my contact information. Please feel free to email me or text me or call me at any time. Steve, that's what I have for tonight.
Thank you, Peter, and very, very informative, especially these last slides to recap. And just a real quick, before closing comments here, we'll ask His Eminence to close in prayer, but Bill shared the ministry handbook examples on stewardship calling. In the chat, you can see the address. And the question is, will the recording and presentation be shared? Yes, it will. And to that point, if I can share one slide with you as well, is this question did come up previously verbally prior to the call. So this is the third in the series of our presentations. And then next month, we will be looking at nurturing a healthy parish, really diving deep into 12 core attributes that most typically align when we talk about a healthy parish. And then, as you can see here and on the Metropolis website as well, a listing of the future. So please join us on those. If you weren't able to attend the first two sessions when we talked about enhancing leadership and succession planning, and then last month on building a theology of leadership rooted in faithful worship, those recordings are also available on the Metropolis website under resources and videos. So that information is available to you as well. To our presenters, thank you, Peter, for coordinating this. I really do appreciate it. A wealth of information. And to Nick, Alexis, and Father Jeffrey, Nick talking about structure and coordination with leadership around the vision. Alexis talking about relationships and all those wonderful examples of that. And then Father Jeffrey talking about connecting the ministries, which generated a great deal of conversation. So I want to thank all of you for that. With that, see if we have a couple thank yous. Paul Gika says, please give us a few days to produce the materials on the website. So they should be available in a few days to you. And with that, then, I want to thank you all for being here. And I will ask His Eminence to please close us in prayer.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks everyone. Especially, it's always good to see my good friend from the other side of this country. Father Jim Cordaris is always faithfully attending our meetings. I appreciate that. As Archon Steve said, a great deal of good information came out from this session, and I hope and pray that when Paul Gikas brings this thing together to have it available to you, that we will take advantage of many good, very, very good suggestions and projects. Let us pray. Christ, our true God, you have entrusted us with the work of building up your church on earth. We thank you for the fellowship and the inspiration shared this evening, and for the dedicated leaders who strive each day to bring your light and love into the life of their parishes. Empower us now, Lord, to go forward with a renewed purpose, to serve with humility and strength, and to lead with wisdom and compassion. Help us to foster ministries that not only meet needs, but transform hearts, inspire faith, and build unity in your body, the church. Bless the hands and the hearts of all who labor in your vineyard, and may all of our efforts be offered to your glory for the upholding of your people and for the salvation of our souls. For you are holy, and to you we give glory and honor and worship, to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, now and always, and to the ages of ages. Amen. A blessed evening to everyone. Thank you so much. God bless us all.
Thank
Thank you, Your Eminence.
Good
All right,
night.
good night, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.